Peace. Welcome to How I Became a Goddess and how you can too. It's really how I became a black sex goddess, but I'm going to give you enough so that you can get an idea whether being a goddess, a sex goddess, and when I say sex goddess, that in itself is very deep. It's like, in history, antiquity, we had fertility goddesses. So today, if I say I am a fertility goddess, people will be looking like, huh? But if you say I'm a sex goddess, they kind of think that they know exactly what you're talking about, but they still kind of really don't. So in actuality, it's more politically correct to say I'm a midwife. It's more politically correct to say I'm a doula, but we can handle some more creativity here, can't we? So it would be safe to say I'm a fertility goddess, right? And so tonight we're going to talk about how I came to this realization and some signs that you yourself might be a goddess, and also how you can become one, or how you can come to the realization of your goddesshood yourself. When I look back, where I realized that this was my destiny and my path. When I was young, I was very creative, always into a lot of art, a lot of fashion. I used to make clothes when I was young. My mother was a seamstress. Even in that and of itself, it's like that's a lot of, it takes a lot to be a creative being. It takes a lot. You need a lot of inspiration. And sometimes that comes from the more sexual nature, the more sensual nature, right? To really have these bursts of innovative, creative ideas. So needless to say, I often found myself pleasure in myself, and to me there was nothing wrong with it, obviously, right? But of course later on in life, you have other influences that make you feel as though this is wrong and that is something you should stop doing, or that is something that only white people do and so forth, or you hear a superstition, so of course you might try to cut that off a little bit. But the creative part about that, it really stood out to me because, now when I look and I see certain sisters saying that they are goddesses, or, they portray themselves as such, a lot of the things that they're doing, I was doing before I ever knew of the term goddess. I was also into creating beads, creating jewelry. So like I would make my own waist beads. Now waist beads is all the rage. It's like, it's so fashionable right now. It's so in. But I was doing these things before there was the internet, and before there was YouTube, and before people had websites and Instagram, so to me it's like, and of course I'm not knocking those sisters or anything. It's when I put things in perspective and I see the bigger picture. I also want to go back a little further, because before all that fashion and making clothes and stuff like that, when I was even younger, in New York, I found myself actually looking through this Karma Sutra and learning a whole lot at probably a very young age, where most people would say children don't have no business knowing anything about that or looking into that type of stuff. But I used to be able to look at that, of course, until it got found out what I was doing. And even before that, when I was younger, I noticed my grandmother, she never used to try to prevent me from seeing nudity on television. And pretty much anywhere else I was at, it was either the television was changed, or I was told to close my eyes, and I was told not to look, right? But I noticed at my grandmother's house, she didn't make a big deal about that, and that kind of opened my eyes up a little bit into sexuality. And I found that very interesting, and I haven't forgotten about that. And I'm glad she did that, because a lot of people have really created a very negative image about sexuality. I'm glad that I didn't have that, that to add on to all the other pressure, I guess you can say, from society. Now, I used to watch a lot of porn on television when I was younger, because they had those channels that just kept going and going. And that's another thing too. People do talk about how watching porn is very negative and very bad for you. And I think that people have to also see that, it's levels. Like, some people can be completely obsessed where they're watching porn 24 hours a day. But I think sometimes your mind does have to be opened up in a way that, just regular going to school and just regular watching regular program and just, can't kind of open up your mind. So it's like you kind of have to know that there's something else other than the construct that people are giving to you. So I think that is what porn did for me. Now, I'm not suggesting everybody go put their child in front of porn or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if that was the impact it had on my life, right? And, so also, I think another thing that kind of helped was that I had always had natural hair growing up. So as we know now, you have the big natural hair movement, right? But it's different when you are a child who's pretty much grown up with natural hair for most of your life. So I always had that. I feel like maybe my pineal gland has not been so calcified, or whatever the case may be, that my psychic abilities was always pretty much active and open. I was always creative, highly intelligent, and I think having natural hair played a major role. So if any sisters are listening, definitely stay away from the perms when it comes to your youth, right? And another thing is that my mother, she used to take us out into nature a lot, and not just my mother, but also my father. He lived in an area that was like a new build, so me and my cousins and my godbrothers, we would go riding bikes, right? And we pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, riding bikes, just out in nature, just under the starlight, hardly any stores, anything like that. It's just a train, and you're pretty much out in the wilderness. Farms. If you go out a certain distance, there's farms. But I think being out in nature had a very also positive impact on just my spirit, my soul in general, right? So come around to being in school and all that. One day my mother had asked me, what is it that I wanted to do when I grew up? And I'm like, a ballerina, because I'm like, who asks you what the hell you want to be when you grow up? So I said, a ballerina. And she basically said to me, you can't make money doing that, or something of the sort. And she pulled out this big book of, I guess, of professions or whatever the case may be, which I could not read anything, but I pointed, and the word that I pointed to was an obstetrician. And so I asked her, what does that mean? Or, she was content that I had pointed to something like that. So she told me what it meant, and basically told me it was somebody that helps to deliver babies. Later on, in when I was coming to graduation and everything, I found out, that, okay, well, you got to cut people's stomach, and you got to perform this and that surgery every now and then. And I just realized that was something that I really didn't want to do. So, I kind of attempted to pursue becoming an actual midwife, through the go to school route, go to university route. I applied several times, and things just didn't work out. So I forgot about it and I let it go. But later on, I eventually had my children, and because I had went through that process with my mother, I was able to have my children at home. My mind was always open. I would be reading magazines about, just radical births. And, so my mind was open where other people barely knew about a midwife or anything. I was even beyond that. I pulled that into how it is that I came to be a sex goddess. right? So as you can see, I haven't really spoken much about sex or anything like that, but you can interchange the word sex with fertility. So we're still thinking about that fertility goddess. My first, second relationship, third, basically was a polygynous relationship. And this is because my grandfather had many children by many different women, and I'm not going to go through the numbers in here today, but this is in a very high range. So to me, that meant that, and not only that, I also had, I had other brothers and sisters by other mothers. And to me, and I've never seen any of these women fight. I've never seen any of these women quarrel, not even call each other a name, not even mad at each other. So I grew up in an environment where what you would consider polygyny was okay. And it's not that my mother was like, yeah, I'm down with polygyny. None of these women were like, yeah, we're down with polygyny or anything like that. They just all had cordial relationships with each other. And so, combined with my grandfather having several children, I felt like, this was the way to go. Of course, I knew about monogamy, so it's not like I was one of those children who just, this is all I know. No, it just seemed like something that would work, something that is just natural, normal, harmonious, and just go on about your life, raising your children and doing whatever interests you. And so, I embarked upon that, and needless to say, polygyny wasn't necessarily working out, at least then. So at that point, I was part of the Rastafari community. So, of course, the word empress is being thrown around. I considered myself an empress and this and that. And, I was, always pretty much helping out either with people's children or my own, right? So, of course, you learn a lot when you're in a polygynous relationship. You also learn a lot when you are taking care of your children and taking care of other people's children, and just being in any type of community setting in general. So eventually I walked away from everything. And when I say I walked away from everything, I walked away from my own house, furnishings, everything, right? And I basically decided to travel. So in traveling, and it's like, there was a part of me, even before a lot of this happened, where it's like, I always wanted to try being homeless. Like, I don't know what it was about it. It just seemed like a spiritual calling. It just seemed like something inside of me that was just like, to do. And, I didn't have to go that route. I could have went the buy a house and live in the suburbs route, but I felt more something about nature, something about spirituality kind of leads you down the path of being open to being able to house, clothe, feed yourself, like the birds, the squirrels, the animals do in a certain sense. So, of course, in walking away from everything and traveling, it kind of comes natural a little bit, minimalism, so I went through that, the whole minimalism, the whole, every now and then not eating as much as you might want to eat or have ate in the past, the whole no shopping. So we're talking about no materialism, no going to different malls, going against capitalism, obviously not being on any type of welfare, social assistance, right? Everything is just basically donations only. And it's a very humbling experience that I think everybody should kind of go through. Like, it's a journey. It's you get to really know yourself, right? So, and I know people's minds are like, oh, she's saying we should all be homeless. I'm not saying, this is not for people who are just on the surface. This is for people who are maybe a little more advanced in spirituality and can kind of understand what I mean. The whole minimalism, going without peace. That's what I'm touching on. Like, I'm not saying you have to go homeless, but you might have to kind of, and anybody who kind of knows what shamans or priestesses or priests go through in that sense, you kind of have to do these things. You got to sleep on the floor. You got to, sleep outside under the starlight, under the moonlight, sit in darkness for several days, sit on the floor, eat on the floor, bathe in the river. I did all of that, right? Did yoga, ate vegan meals, alternative ways of finding food or getting food, whether it's foraging in the forest or what have you, learning the natural plants, not bathing in the chlorinated water that comes out of your tap, not using the soap with all the parabens and the, all the different chemicals that's stripping your skin, washing your hair with water only, no shampoo, just going on a natural hair journey that is not glamorous. It's not, it's not on YouTube. It's just, this was just the life, right? So I went through all of that. And then, of course, with that comes actually helping other people. And, you would be surprised how much you could help people when you are actually there, and it's not to say, oh, I was in their condition. No, that was my situation. That was my condition. That was, I can't even claim it. It just was, and it's like, it makes you a better person. It makes you don't have that fear. I think a lot of people have fears, right? And, in one of these situations too, I did get very sick. And if you also learn about other cultures, when people get sick sometimes, and it's like a very life or death type of sickness, a lot of times those are the people that they say have the gift, or, they're the shaman, or they're the one, right? And I've come to the realization too, is that part of the reason for that is that because if you survive through a major sickness, how could you not overcome fear, overcome death? How could you not come back after damn near being delusional, thinking you're going to die and, all these things? How could you not come back as a more highly advanced type of being, even on a human level? So I think that's what happens, why they do that, right? So I also want to say is that as a fertility goddess, as a sex goddess, as a goddess, period, I have healed from all sexual trauma. And I've never heard anybody say that. I feel that people badger people over the head with what may have happened to them when they were a child, or, even in adulthood, right? We have to give people a chance to heal, and you have to give yourself a chance to heal. And once you are healed, you are healed. You cannot, it's not this whole victimhood thing of going on forever. It's not real unless it's real in your mind, or unless you allow somebody else to keep you in that state of mind and in that position. And I want to say that, like, if something has happened to you, if you've experienced sexual trauma, you need to deal with it. Go through the steps, the process, really deal with it and let it go. There's so much more. There is actual life at the other end of the tunnel, a whole life waiting for you. That sexual trauma does not define your destiny. So I've gone there and I've been there. So I've healed through all of that, right? And I feel like I've also healed myself in other ways, not just sexually, through, chanting affirmations, through meditating, through honoring our ancestors, my ancestors, our brothers and sisters amongst me, the divine feminine and the divine masculine, right? And I've basically given myself and my life as an offering, right? So I feel like that has really helped propel me into this realm of being the Black sex goddess. I had also had a page up called I Am the Black Sex Goddess. This was about 4 years ago. It was getting a lot of views and everything, right? But I feel like it was kind of being taken the wrong way because, just because I say I'm the sex goddess doesn't mean it's all about sex, or it doesn't mean that sex has to be looked at in a derogatory type of way. So I kind of want to shed some perspectives on that and basically use the attention for something positive and something beneficial, right? So another thing too is that I battled a lot of what you would call demons or anything like, and any ego, any ideals or any fears. Like I mentioned before, my whole journey basically has helped me to battle what I would call those demons or those experiences or those fictitious constructs, right? So now I want to get into the 10 signs that you might be a goddess. So again, anything that I've mentioned before, the whole going without, the whole being rejected by society for, wanting to look into certain things, whether it be sexual in nature, sensual in nature, whatever the case may be, those are included. But I also want to add 10 more signs that you might be a goddess. Of course, you can differentiate sex goddess, fertility goddess, whatever the case may be. These are not too sexual in nature, but these points will kind of help you to kind of see where you're at. So basically, if you like waking up other brothers and sisters, to new information, to new ways of doing things, and even though you find that maybe your family has rejected you or this or that person, you still find yourself kind of like tapping people on the shoulder, hey, do you know about this? You're basically planting seeds. If you like doing things like that, you might be a goddess. And then if you just know that there's a better way of living, like if you look around you and you see people hungry, dying, striving for materialism, capitalism, the wrong things, and just, ruining their relationships, or the relationships are being ruined as a result of the way we live, or that society is, you might have that goddess gene in you as well, right? And if you're into nature, like if you're into going out into nature, if you actually enjoy these things and you don't feel right if you don't swim every now and then, or if you don't go for a walk in the park, or you like rocks, crystals, you like babies, you like natural hair, you just like birth, you just like love, right? Again, you might have that goddess gene in you. So I think we're at number 8 right now, so we're going on to 7. So right, if you've had a natural childbirth, or if you want to be a doula, a midwife, or if you just love babies in general, that could be another sign that you're a goddess. And there's different types of goddesses, so don't get me wrong, I guess, if you're a goddess of a different type of nature, but this is what comes to my mind when I think of a goddess, right? And so this one here again is if you're vegan. So I'm just gonna drop that and leave that there, right? So I think we're at number 5 now. So again, if you're sensual, if you like to touch, If you feel things and when you speak, you say, I feel instead of I see. Or, if you're very sensual, if you like moving, if you like dancing, if you're in touch with your femininity, right? And you're not confused about what the white man is putting in your food or anything like that. You know that you are sensual and that you are feminine. You might be a goddess. And also, if you want justice for your people, you might be a goddess. If you feel that you are called to do a great work in this time, you might be a goddess. And if you're very creative and resourceful and intelligent, as I've described, into art, things like that, creating things, you might be a goddess, right? And again, as I've mentioned it, you might be a different type of goddess. If you feel volatile, if you feel destructive, angry, unsettled with the system and the current way of life, you might be a goddess. But it's how you use your power that is key. So I also want to help you to accelerate stepping into your goddess self, stepping into your goddesshood, right? And the first thing I would say is to not resist. Don't resist the natural urge that you have to go within yourself and find out who you really are. Don't resist that. Because I think that in the society, if you're going to school, if you're going to work, if you have a lot of people in your space, in your face, you will be compelled to try to fit the status quo, to try to conform, to stay, in the norm, right? You are going to have to exclude yourself from all of the glitz and the glam of the current system that's going on right now. You're going to have to basically, go on a similar journey possibly to what I've been through. Or you might have to really go through the muck and the mire of the matrix. They might have to really push you out. You might have to really just, get so angry and so frustrated with things that you realize that that's not what the way you want things to go, and that's not who you are. And also do some more soul searching, find out what it is that you're really interested in, what really drives you, what is your reason, why do you want to be a goddess? It's not like something, I don't think people just wake up one day and be like, oh, I want to be a goddess. No, it's like kind of like, are you or are you not? Or why? It's more like, why do you want to finally realize that part of you, or why do you want to finally live in that essence? Because you don't have to. You could be living in a very different type of spirit, so you need to figure that out, right? Figuring that out will really help you come to the realization of what type of goddess you are, all of that. If you want to keep in touch, you can follow me. I'm on pretty much all social media. If you just type in my name, Nattyisisyah, I should pop up. But if you also want to talk to me about, your situation, in waking up to being a goddess, no matter what type of goddess you might be, you can definitely reach out and contact me. My email is Nattyisisyah at Yahoo. So that's Nattyisisyah at yahoo.com. I have upcoming workshops. For that, if you contact me, you can get notifications of my upcoming workshop. Definitely reach out to me in that way. Email me. You can also join my groups on Facebook, Goddess Nattyisisyah, or just my regular Facebook page, Nattyisisyah. Search for that should come up. Another thing too, as a goddess, you might want to recommend this video to another sister who is, realizing her power, just up and coming, and needing a little more encouragement, motivation. You could recommend this video by sharing the link, sharing the video to her, sharing it with any sisters that who could benefit from hearing this type of information. And seriously, consider goddesshood. Like, really consider it. So if you can donate, email me and I'll tell you how. If you're still listening and you want to hear more, email me as well.